So I did a video on the basics of compression, and I immediately got feedback that said, Ed, this is fantastic. This is wonderful. This was well needed. Well, I really appreciate it. And so I figured, you know what? Let's just kind of hang out in compression land for a few videos here and just dive a little bit deeper into some things. One of the things I mentioned in the basics video is that depending on the source that you are applying compression to, that's going to inform kind of how you want to dial your settings in. So I figured let's do a video to kind of look at applying compression to some different sources. So I'm going to pull up a track and we're going to apply some compression to a kick drum. We're going to apply some compression to a piano. We're going to apply some compression to a vocal and just look at kind of what it's doing and what some of the different settings are that we might want to use. All right. So before we get into it, why don't you take a moment and like this video? Why don't you take a moment and subscribe to this channel? I would greatly appreciate it, and feel free to share with somebody else. All right, so this is it's gonna be a good video. I think you guys are really gonna enjoy this. Let's get into it. You're gonna like it.
McCray Music.
All right, my friends, let's take a look at how we can apply compression to different sources. If you did not watch the video on compression basics, card up in the top, you're going to want to watch that. We talked a little bit about how, depending on the source of that you're trying to compress, you're going to want to do different things in regards to maybe not so much threshold, but definitely in regards to attack and release. All right. So let's look. I've got an instrumental here. Let's just play the instrumental. All right, so that's an instrumental for a single that I am working on that you'll hear later this year. So there's lots of things to work with in here. So I want to play around a little bit with our kick. We're going to play around a little bit with a piano, and then we'll play around a little bit with a vocal here and see kind of what our compression settings are doing. So let's solo our kick, and let's just hear what we have just with the kick. All right. Nice kick. There's no processing on here. There is a gate, and that's it. Now, full disclosure, the drummer who recorded this has a full analog setup. So it was recorded with some compression and like some things going in. So there's some of that that's baked in to what's happening, because you're like, why does that kick sound so good and when this is not mixed? Well, it's because he has a ridiculous setup, and so there is some of that baked in. But let's go ahead and throw our stock compressor on here, and let's just see what we're getting. Let's go on ahead and let's turn off our auto gain. Let's turn off our auto release, and let's just see what kind of gain reduction we're getting just with these default settings. Again, I typically like to be around like a 3:3 ratio. Let's see what we got. All right, so we're getting a good amount of gain reduction right here already, just with the threshold where it is. So I really want to focus on the attack and release. So I'm going to leave the threshold probably right where it's at. And I think it should be. Matter of fact, I'm going to dial it in a little bit more. I'm going to exaggerate it just a little bit so you can really hear what's happening. And if you want to play around with compression, that's what I recommend you do. Really exaggerate, like go and sometimes you might do this anyway, just go all the way in and then start dialing back till you get it where you want. So let's try that. All right, so I'm going to put it right about there. All right, so probably a little bit more than I'll actually use when I actually mix this for real. But let's play around with and let's get a little makeup gain in here so that we're not tricking ourselves. Just a little makeup gain. All right, so I'm going to play around with the attack and the release. Remember, I talked in our basics of compression video that when we're dealing with transients, right, you want to be a little bit more careful with the attack, especially. The faster the attack, it can start to cut off some of the transient. So I'm going to let the kick run, and I'm going to really kind of dial in a fast attack, and then we'll kind of dial it back. And I want you to listen carefully. You might want to put headphones on for this. Listen carefully, and let's see if we can hear what's happening to the transient the faster our attack gets. See how as the attack got faster, it really started chopping off that transient. It really made it thinner. I'm going to do it one more time. So here I have a very fast attack. It's as fast as it can be. And listen to how it rounds out and it gets fuller the more I back off of the attack. Let's back off a little bit. Keep going. See how different that sounds, right? So that is a important thing. When we're dealing with a transient, right, we want to be careful with the attack. The quicker we have the attack, it's going to start kind of thinning it out. It's going to take some of the power away, especially in the context of the mix as a whole. Let's do that in the context of the whole rough mix here. Let's bring it back to a fast attack, and let's see what that's doing in the context of the mix with the rest of the instrumental. See how in the context of the whole instrumental with the attack too fast, that kick kind of disappears, right? That the feel of that kick. And that's why I say you might want to put headphones on for this too, right? The feel of that kick kind of disappears. We dial that back some, and then we still have our compression, but we don't want it hitting so quickly, right? We want to allow the fullness of that to come through. A similar thing can happen with our release, right? Let's solo this again. I'm going to leave the attack right here. Let's play around with the release a little bit. And let's see what happens. So you see what happens there? So when I get too aggressive with the too long of a release, right, the compressor hasn't released yet when the next hit comes in. And so I'm getting a similar type of deal. So now I'm going to leave it with a really, really long release time. And we'll see what happens as I shorten that release time with this transient. Watch this. See that as I shorten the release time, it's now short enough for it to have released all the way before the next kick hit comes in. And so it's not squashing it. When it was too long, that second hit was really light, right? And so that's not what we want. Now, I'm not going to want to go with this long of a release here, because later in the song, when he starts, kind of grooving a little bit more and doing more fills, the kick time is a lot more triplets and other things happening, right? So I'm going to want a much shorter release. And usually with the transient, we want to have a nice short release. We want to have a short to moderate attack. We want to have a nice short release, all right? So I hope that helps you. Let's try this on the piano and see what's happening. I'm going to come up here to the piano, and let's take this off of here, and let's go ahead and throw a compressor on our piano. I don't have any compression happening here. It's just a EQ. And let's see what we've got here. And we'll dial in some threshold, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll play around a bit with the attack and release. Now, the threshold is going to matter more here as well, because it is a sustained situation, right? It's a sustained source, right? And so we're going to want to be even mindful with the threshold as well. So let's try some stuff. So you can see there, right, as I start to really go in, and let's get a little makeup gain here. As I start to really go in on the threshold, it's squashing that piano, right? As I back off of it, right, it's allowing that piano to kind of ring out a little bit. Now, this is something that's important to know. So with a sustained situation like this, and sometimes even with a transient, you might want that, right? Like I might want that as an effect. If this was like a real like lo-fi, or like if I wanted like a real gritty sound, I might want to over exaggerate that threshold because that's the sound I want. So this exercise is not about, oh, you should always do this and never do that. No, it's not the case. This exercise is about, this is what these different settings do so that you know when you might want to actually apply them, right? So let's, I think this is a decent threshold. Let's play around with the attack and release and see what's happening. So we see here with this, the goal is a little different, right? I want a bit of a faster attack here because I want it to catch those big hits on the piano. I want it to push those down a little bit. If I have a slower attack, it's not going to really do what I want it to do. It's going to miss some of those big hits, and it's going to try to compress after, and I might not want that, right? So watch what's happening. I have a real fast release, or a fast attack. Right, see I was hitting that? I'm gonna dial it back. So here it's not giving me the effect I want, right? Because it's compressing after. It's giving it kind of almost more of a pulse, right? And so again, different things. Let's play around with the release a little bit. Let's get the attack where we want and play around with the release. So again, here with a sustained source, my release, what I want to do with the release might be a little different, right? If I want it to have more of a pulse, then I might want a faster release, right? Because that way the compressor keeps releasing and coming back in, releasing and coming back in, and it gives me a little pulse, right? A little movement. If I don't want that, then I'm going to have a little bit of a moderate to longer release, right? And the longer I have the release, the further it's going to push it back in the mix, all right? Because it's already compressed and then another hit comes in and it's going to compress it a little bit further, right? So again, different things to think about depending on the source, right? Let's listen to a vocal. Let's apply it to a vocal here, and we're going to get a similar type deal. So I have a lead vocal here. And do I have any compression on here already? I might. No, I just have a little trim and a little EQ. So let's throw a compressor on here. And same thing. Let's turn our auto gain and auto release off. Let's play around with the same stuff with the lead vocal. Cleansing flow, blood of God, pure and true. Yeah. Rescued me from sin, pardoned me. Paid my debt, now I can rest in you. Oh, sweet cleansing flow, blood of... All right, so same type of deal here. Now with a lead vocal, and card up in the top, if you watch my video where I was mixing a lead vocal, you'll see me do some things with multiple compressors there. But with the vocal, it could be a little bit different, right? Again, do I want to move this push this vocal forward in the mix? Well, if that's the case, then I probably want to have a quicker release. And I might want to have a more moderate mid kind of fast attack maybe, but probably more of like a mid to almost slow attack. All right. Or do I want to really squash this vocal? Same thing, right? Let's squash the vocal a little bit. Cleansing flow, blood of God, pure and true. And you might be like, Ed, that doesn't sound good. And you're right. It doesn't sound great in this application. But if I was doing something that you know, I wanted a grungier sound, a grittier sound, then I might want to come in and squash the vocal. Or maybe I might want to automate that as an effect for certain parts, right? Where I really squash the vocal and maybe distort it a little bit, right? So it's all about knowing what everything does. So I hope that that helps. And I want to encourage you, try this out, right? Pull up some different sources, and we have all kinds of stuff in here we could play around with, but this will be a 2-hour video, and that's not what this is for, right? But go in there and play around, and just the purpose is to just get an understanding. Oh, that's what threshold is doing. Cool. Oh, that's what the attack and release. Oh, that's what the ratio is doing, right? Just try it. It's not going to hurt you. Try some stuff. Play around with it. It'll help you to get an understanding of what's happening, and you'll start to understand what you do and maybe don't want to do on different sources. Okay, so I hope that that really helped you guys, right? And again, as I said in the demo there, play around with stuff. Don't be scared to try stuff. Just throw some compression, throw a compressor on a track, and just turn knobs, right? Because the biggest thing is we need to understand what we're hearing, right? Like, what is this actually doing? So throw a compressor on something and just over compress it. Just turn stuff all the way up, turn it all the way down. Just figure out, don't try to make it sound good. Just try to figure out what the heck everything is doing. And that's gonna make your life a lot easier. When you start getting ready to actually mix something, you'll be surprised because now you know, oh, I want this, I need this kick to hit a little bit harder. Oh, let's make sure I don't dial the attack in too quick, right? Or, oh, you know, I need to push this back in the mix. Let's give it a longer release, right? You'll kind of know automatically what it is you want. Hey, I really want this to have a grungy sound. Let me over compress this a little bit and really squash it, right? So you'll really start to understand what it is that you want. And we're gonna take a look at some other aspects of compression in some other videos. Please feel free again to leave a like on this video. I really appreciate the support and how you guys are helping to grow the channel. Thank you so much for every click, every watch, every like, every share. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Oh, and subscribe to the channel too, right? Make sure that you do that. And I'm gonna see you guys again in another video.